In Africa, we need this very much. In all the dry areas in the world, we need to see why the decision taken in convention after convention. I think when we were in Kyoto, there was a meeting on, this is the World Water Council. We said, water is human right and water is for everybody. What we ended up with, that no translation of this. We said before in several meetings, food is for everybody. It's the right of every human being to have food. But what happened? We have 900 million now who is in hunger and acute malnutrition. I worked for 9 years with Jacques Diouf. I was in the High Committee for the implementation of the Millennium Goals. We have worked, all the heads of FAO, they used to report and give us an idea about what they are doing in the implementation of the global targets. And what happened? It decreased and then suddenly increased again. Because it does not translate. It has to translate to community. It has to be owned by people. People has to work together, and therefore institutions has to correct their course according to the will of the people. And this is what we are hoping for. And let us really work together and see how this next session will be formulated, and the continuation of this session. This session is today, but it will continue tomorrow with Dr. Ismail Swagdeen. We will have some people who has been in the seat of policymaker, heads of states and prime ministers. Tomorrow we'll start with Dr. Jeffrey Sachs. First at 9:30 he will talk, and then after that we will move to the high-level politicians in Europe and in different other places who will give us their experience, why the decision we make in conventions internationally, why it's not translated, why there is a hindrance in this. And meanwhile they will address other point about the future of this $100 billion which has gone nowhere. And we don't know, we need to see if this will help, which is just a drop in the ocean to remedy the damage which happened to developing countries from the advanced industrial countries. They will talk about these elements, and therefore, and after that, we will, there will be the closing session tomorrow in the afternoon. I think it's the very harsh issue in this process, Professor Lael, is that some people in different sessions in COP26 in Glasgow and before that, it happened in Copenhagen, it happened in Cancun. What they say after they thought about the problem, they say, why these people stay where they are? Let them move. And they call it transition. Then we handle this as a global community to ask people or a whole nation, please leave your place and go somewhere. And when you go somewhere, because it will affect their grass, because they have better meadow and green, they will either you lose your life in the sea, or you will stay in the border and you will never allow it in. It's easy said. That's why developing countries need a solution in their own home, not by telling them with luxury, go somewhere else. That we have political refugees, water and food and soil, and it's all environmental refugees, but climate change refugees. The point is, and I hope that we had a lot of students and staff in the audience here, the very staggering point is that the projection for climate change, even with 1.5 degrees, we are talking about addition to the 35 million refugees now, you will have another 200 million. This is Professor Meyer from Oxford. But other people are suggesting that if we go with report 6, part 2 on adaptation and the segment for out-migration, there is some people who are demographic, they suggest that it could go up to 1 billion. Imagine we are now 7.93 billion people living on this planet. If we will have 1 billion of them moving around, with the analysis of His Excellency Professor Doueri, and he was with the government as well with international organization, and like FAO, he was president of a couple of universities. He knows exactly what he's saying. But it's not a matter of emotion, it's humanity. What are we going to do? And the solution is in the resolutions taken before Paris in Copenhagen. We said we will have a fund for adaptation, we'll have a fund for moving science and technology to the needy. Nothing happened. We have gone from there. I attended COVID in Copenhagen. Then we moved to Cancun. Same thing happened. Promises, no translation. And therefore now we are talking about the catastrophe of 1 billion, between 200 million to 1 billion people moving from their countries to countries they are hoping it will be better and it will accept them as a human being, not as slaves. And therefore, it's just, I'm just saying this, so it's not a matter of raising the bars, because the bars are already there. If you can allow me 2 minutes, I'll just speak in another language.
Yes, please.
Arabic. يعني شوفوا يا جماعة، انتوا يعني احنا اللي بيتكلموا عليه ده يعني محبة طبيعة. يعني احنا عندنا، مش انا بتكلم مثلا في الاسلام، هم خلق مثلكم. يعني النمل، النحل، النبات، دي كلها كائنات ربنا هو اللي خلقها، لازم نحافظ عليها. الميه اللي بنشربها دي لازم نحافظ عليها، واحنا مسؤولين عن هذا. يعني في مسؤوليه. يعني مثلا معامله الحيوانات، في حد مثلا دخل الجنه عشان رعى قطه او كلب او اي كائن، فاحنا لازم ناخد عظه وعبره من التراث بتاعنا، سواء كان اسلامي، لو كان في اخوه من الاباط يشوفوا التراث بتاعهم ايضا. الكلام ده مش كلام مرسل اللي هم بيتكلموا فيه، ده كلام حقيقي وموجود عندنا. يعني لازم الاحساس ده يبقى موجود، لان مثلا مملكه النمل والنحل وكل القصص دي عظه وعبره ان في حكمه من خلقهم، وهم لهم قانونهم اللي موجود وبيتعاملوا مع بعض ازاي. دي عمليه للتامل بعيدا. لكن ايه اللي يهمنا في القصه دي كلها؟ ان احنا نتوائم مع الطبيعه باحترام وبتفهم، وما نبقاش قاسيين لا على نفسنا ولا على ما حولنا. عشان كده مثلا يعني في الحج ما تقدرش حتى تقتل حاجه ولا اي كائن، ده محرم. انا بس بدي رساله سريعه عشان تعرفوا ان اللي بتقوله مريم والبروفيسور لا مش بعيد عننا ابدا. كون ان احنا عندنا فهم كل واحد يبقى ممكن عنده فهم مختلف، لكن لازم يبقى فيه توحيد في الفهم في وجودنا كبني ادمين على الارض دي، بنعمل ايه ورايحين فين وجايين منين. فهتوقف هنا بس نرجع لهم تاني.
Greetings, everyone. I'm very pleased to join you in this very important endeavor. The title of my talk is "The Decision for Environmental Restoration is a Human One." The IPCC, the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, put out the word that we have until 2030 to quit using fossil fuels and to prevent the continuation of agribusinesses that are destroying rainforests, and to engage in a major effort to protect oceans. The report noted that, quote, urgent changes needed to cut risk of extreme heat, drought, floods, and poverty, end of quote. Yet, nations make plans for changes to be in place by the year 2050. We need more people coming to the table who recognize this is the most important thing facing us and our home, the planet we live on. It needs everyone's attention and care. Time is a crucial element. Grassroots endeavors can work alongside their governments in order to enact plans for climate restoration. This is real important. Everybody needs to come to the table. In the book, Earth in Human Hands, Shaping Our Planet's Future by David Rinsfeld, he notes, more than the extreme and undeniable physical changes to the planet being caused by human influence, it is this dawning self-recognition that is really fundamentally different and ultimately promising about the Anthropocene. Many species have changed the planet to the benefit or detriment of others, but there has never been a geological force aware of its own influence. End of quote. This influence is immense, but how many people give quality attention to caretaking of our environment, our home? When we think of 8 billion people, which we're rising, that means a lot of people are not paying attention. Being cognizant of the human journey is important, as we need to know our past as well in order to transform the future. Human beings appeared on this planet approximately 5 to 7 million years ago. As hunter-gatherer societies, we lived in harmony with nature, but humans eventually learned how to manipulate the environment. For example, around 11,000 years ago, agricultural practices began. The idea that we could control nature was beginning its emergence. Humans began congregating and growing cities, becoming more sedentary. They no longer moved in harmony with the seasons. The results of these evolutionary advances were both beneficial and destructive. Abstract thinking was developing. Within a couple of thousand years, human beings began formulating ideologies, no longer moving around with a sense of oneness with the natural world. This separation led to a loss of that felt relationship with nature. Soon we would see the emergence of the world's religious traditions. The Abrahamic traditions noted stewardship of the land in their teachings. For example, the Judeo-Christian Bible notes, the earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants belong to the Lord. That's Psalm 24:1. Good stewards take care of the gifts God has given them to manage. So what will be held accountable for? We have made stewards of the things of earth, such as money, tangible things, and even people. The Quran, chapter 7, verse 31, notes our responsibility to maintain the balance that Allah has created in this perfectly balanced world on the basis of sustainability and circularity. We are expected to act moderately, thoughtfully, and justly. The Vedic teachings of India advise, do not harm the environment, do not harm the water and the flora. Earth is my mother, I am her son. May the waters remain fresh, do not harm the waters, end of quote. Buddhism originated and developed in tropical forests. Thus, Buddhist teachings give rise to the ecological ethic with a strong concern for nature and the forest. They emphasize the importance of coexisting with nature rather than conquering it. The indigenous tribes, still found throughout remote areas of the planet, have never lost a felt sense of communion with nature. They can also help us to learn how to restore much of the land if we are willing to listen. I'll come back to this topic later, as first I'd like to address the perils and promises initiated by the dominant cultures. How many people actually pay attention to caretaking of our environment into their lives and practice? This attentiveness has been especially threatened by economic structures motivated and designed by greed, with no concern for the environment. Humans are continuously tempted through advertising to purchase more and more things, including the newest technologies, for instance, iPhone. Where do the elements come from that allow for these items? Copper is a critical element in building wind turbines and used for lithium-ion batteries. Mining depletes the natural world. Few people take the time to learn that Afghanistan has over $1 trillion of minerals in its soil. The need to assure these elements are available for our ever-growing technologies can also lead to wars. A friend once told me that much of what we create, hoping to help the planet, simply adds another problem. For example, mining copper for wind turbines, cobalt for rechargeable lithium-ion batteries, electronic devices, and electric cars has led to endangerment to children through labor practices, safety risks, and environmental abuses. We just keep mining and depleting the earth for increasing amounts of resources, despite the fact that the earth is evidencing extreme weather changes leading to a possible extinction event. We are rapidly approaching 8 billion people on this planet. Many of these near 8 billion people are uneducated and lack knowledge concerning the ways they impact the natural world. Some simply do not care. It simply has not entered their consciousness to do so. Others may be too stressed given the daily foraging for food and water occurring in impoverished environments. Now, Costa Rica is famed for its rainforests and beauties. It has little rivers flowing through many neighborhoods. Yet when I was living there, I saw locals throwing large plastic bags filled with garbage into the little rivers. Once I was on a bus and saw a child open a window so she could throw away her empty soda bottle. I explained to her this is not good practice. Her mother was angry at me for speaking up. This is just one very minor example out of this growing 8 billion in approximately 195 nations. What is the percentage of people actually focusing on healing the environment by changing how we live? In the United States, the recent fossil fuel crisis initiated a lot of anger at the high cost of car gas. Of course, this is especially a problem for people who work for minimum pay, as simply driving to and from their place of employment is taking most of their pay. People panic. No one at any economic level appears to be willing to make conscious sacrifices. For example, pay more for fuel and drive less in order to quickly move away from fossil fuels. The real goal should have been, using this difficulty, to unite and make needed sacrifices for the good of our planet. Instead, the response in the U.S. was to dispense more fossil fuels and appease the discomfort. This was the time to quickly move toward creating safer forms of energy. but instead they found ways to lower the gas costs. There are people sounding the alarm concerning diminishing bee populations and how this impacts plant pollination and thus our food. An article by Dave Wilson examines major insects and pesticide problems, saying the cause of insect declines, I'm quoting here, are numerous, with habitat loss and the industrialization of global farming leading the way, assisted by growing use of pesticides, the depredations of invasive species, increasing light pollution, and more. Populations of many insects are now much reduced compared to the past, and most now exist in habitat islands, fragments of their favored habitat surrounded by inhospitable terrain. Sadly, climate change is likely to be the final straw for some. Of course, the climate has changed in the past many times, and insects have survived. Indeed, insects have come through all 5 of the previous mass extinction events on our planet, although many individual species must have been lost. However, this time is different. In the past, climate change was usually more gradual, and species could gradually shift their ranges in response, shifting toward the poles as the climate warmed and returning toward the equator as it cooled. Such movement used to be easy, but there were vast tracts of suitable habitat. Today, to move polewards, insects must somehow hop from one patch of habitat to the next, crossing roads, landscapes filled with polluting factories, arable fields sprayed with insecticides, housing estates, and other alien human-made landscapes. These illustrations show the divide between modern civilization and the natural world. Human beings are dependent upon land, sea, and air. We cannot ignore the glaring signs of environmental catastrophes around us. But again, how many human beings care enough to make personal sacrifice? Worldwide, there are over 38,000 golf clubs utilizing water to keep the grasses green, while elsewhere people and other species are suffering from drought. There's a cable TV program that I like a whole lot called New Amsterdam. The program highlights significant issues and imbalances in its storylines. Last season, Max, the medical director, decided the hospital could change its practices to help environmental restoration. The script was written in a way to document the attitudes, refusals, and Max's dismay at the unwillingness of people to let go of the immense amount of hospital use and waste. For example, Max told them to wash their hands and not use all the plastic cups that they are using on a daily basis. He tried to change to healthier forms of lighting. He changed hospital dining menus to eliminate beef products, to reduce methane gas and the problem of clearing forests for raising farm animals. Everyone objected to every single move he made. The uproar was immense. Now, this was only one little TV show, but how many hospitals do we have on the planet that are using all these products? There are around 2,000 hospitals in 27 nations. This represents a lot of products being used to be started. But how many people are willing to give up those items and lifestyles causing harm? This is a moral problem. It also asks for what I'm called flexibility of mind. You may have a belief in a related way of living that no longer meets the needs of the time. Can we hear what's needed? And are we willing to make cognitive and actualized changes? There are over 15 million restaurants worldwide. How many of them continue with single-use plastic, straws, coffee stirrers, etc.? These are not small things when you add them up. Do we take the time to point this out to the managers of those restaurants? I do. As noted earlier, indigenous people are more in touch with the natural world. The indigenous people of the world have been and continue to be the voices for our Mother Earth. For example, the Koji of Colombia, the Hopi, Lakota Sioux, and other First Nations people of the United States and Canada, the Achuara of the Ecuadorian Amazon, and other Upper Amazonian tribes, Inuit of the Arctic region, the Dogon of Mali, the Zulu, Zangoma, and Kalahari San of Africa, the Kahuna of the Hawaiian Islands, the Maori of New Zealand, the Aborigines of Australia, the shamanic tribes in Siberia, and many other indigenous cultures around the world are still struggling to protect their sacred land from oil and natural gas companies that ongoingly rob Mother Earth of her lifeblood. Over 8,000 years ago, St. Francis of Assisi recognized all manifestations of life were interconnected. The Catholic Church proclaimed him to be patron saint for both animals and the natural environment. St. Francis considered the elements of air, earth, fire, and water as kin. He called trees, animals, and all species in nature brothers and sisters. If we can see all of nature as interconnected, our choices will have greater wisdom and be more compassionate. In summary, despite all the many efforts to restore health to land, air, and sea, It will not be successful unless humanity aligns itself with the natural world and also listens to the indigenous peoples of this planet. They know how to live in harmony with nature. For instance, wildfires have been a growing threat, but Native Americans have ways of working with forests to prevent such dangers. We need to listen. In closing, the Greenland shaman Angangag Sang notes, the time has come to unite our voices and our hearts, to walk our spiritual paths with practical feet, to restore the balance that's been missing on the earth. We cannot wait. Through our healing circles, we create experiences that empower us to live more compassionately, transforming our world one life at a time, melting the ice in the heart of humanity. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be able to present here.
Wow. What an excellent presentation.
Thank you, and I thank you for the organizers for inviting me to be part of this, and I apologize for the delay. I actually was a little bit confused about the time sitting here in New York, but it all worked out, so here I am. I want to begin with a story. For years, my organization, the Global Peace Initiative of Women, has been bringing a delegation of spiritual teachers to the UN climate conferences annually to speak about the inner dimensions of climate change, the spiritual aspects of this crisis, ecological crisis. So a few years ago, until COVID, when we haven't been doing that since COVID, but a year or so before COVID, there was the UN COP meeting in Poland, and we were en route to go. But before that, we had an interfaith meeting in Japan that we had to attend to look at the way the different faith communities were responding to the climate crisis. So I was in Japan, and one of the delegates, who was actually the climate negotiator for the Dominican Republic, but also a real lover of whales, and took people out to listen to the whale song, spent a whole session talking about the intelligence and communication skills of whales, and he played their songs, which were haunted. And then he played one that was set to the background of the singer Joan Baez, the folk singer, and it was a duet between the whale and Joan Baez. I have to tell you, it was haunting. So I learned a lot. I have to admit, I never thought much of the whales before that. I mean, I knew there were whales, but I didn't feel a personal connection with them. Came back to New York briefly, and then we were en route to Poland for the conference. On the way to Poland, I had a vivid dream. One of those dreams that is so real and there's such a impact on me. In the dream, I was standing in my apartment in New York City, which overlooks the East River. And as I was looking out over the river, this large whale swims up the river, stops in front of my apartment, looks up directly at me, and we make this contact. And I said to the whale, I hear you. And then I look up, and the stream stayed with me. I said to myself, I think I just agreed to represent the whales at the UN Climate Conference. I went to the conference. I went to every session that was there on seas. Not one session mentioned animals at sea. But in the process of this, I used to describe my work as interfaith. We changed that. We don't do interfaith. Our work is interspecies now, because it's incumbent on us to recognize and connect with all the life forms on Earth. So one of the sessions I went to, which was on concern of the seas, dealt mostly with tourist assets. What were these countries going to do who depended on the seas for tourism? And I thought to myself, just because we can't see them, does it mean we're going to negate them? They don't exist because we don't see them? A year ago, last summer, there was a heat wave over the Northwest in the US. About 100 people died. It was a tragedy. It was something to really take note of. But experts say 8 billion sea animals died because the waters were a little bit warmer, just a teeny bit warmer. 1 billion. We lost 1 billion sea animals in a few days. And yet it hardly shook our consciousness. The floods in Pakistan, a terrible thing. Over 1,000 people have died. Over 1 million, at least over 1 million animals have died. So in the process of this, I say to myself, are we such a narcissistic species that we can't see beyond ourselves? We don't understand interconnection. We use that word all the time. But if we truly understood interconnection, we would know that what happens to them is happening to us. We are connected. We are part of them. They're not separate from us. The biggest human illusion is this idea of separation. And it came during this time of evolution, where we had a more collective intelligence at a certain point, and then individualism developed and developed and developed and developed, until we reached the point today where we're completely cut off from everything else. And we only care about ourselves and the impact it's going to have on us. So I've thought a lot about how to change this. And I say to young people, because we do a lot of work with young people who are concerned very concerned about their future. And I say to them, fall in love with the earth again. Fall in love. That's what's needed. Fall in love with the trees, fall in love with the birds, fall in love with the animals. One of the blessings, and there are hidden blessings to this COVID epidemic, despite the tragedies, is that we all had to stop and pause and look around and be home. And the question asked of Sharon of what we can do, remote work is one of the answers that is living in front of us. We don't have to go anywhere to do our work. Thankfully, Zoom came just at the time that COVID hit. So whereas previously I would have to get on a plane and fly to be with you, now I can be with you without leaving my library. And so while I've been home, hardly leaving these last 2.5 years, I'm much more aware of the birds that live with me. I live upstate New York, an hour or so outside of the city. I'm much more aware of the animal life. I'm aware of what's happening. We're in a drought right now. I'm not only thinking of the impact on humans, what about the animals? They need to drink too. Where are the animals going to get the water? We can have mass die-off of animals. If we have mass die-offs, and not just of animals, trees too. I've lost a lot of trees, bushes in this drought. We are going to suffer. And until we understand that what happens out there affects us, we're not separate from it. We're not going to be able to take the steps needed. So I think one of the shifts in consciousness is to truly, on a deep level, live this reality of interdependence. Not just see it as a concept, but understand it as a living reality. We have to be more connected, which means we have to take time to spend with all the life forms around us, the trees, the plant life, the animal life. Now I want to talk a little bit about agriculture, because agriculture actually, ironically, has been a big part of our work at GPAW. And the reason for that is about 20 years ago, I was invited to Japan by a Shinto-based group called Shime. They were interested in interfaith work, and so they reached out to me. And later they were interested in gaining ECOSOC status at the UN, which they did. And they've joined us in various programs. They've participated in climate change COP meetings. Their focus is agriculture. For a spiritual organization, it's rare. They see as part of their spiritual practice the interaction, the growing of food, the work with the soil, and they pay a lot of attention to soil. Soil is a big part of their spiritual life. Enriching the soil, they use no inputs at all, not even organic inputs. So they've done a lot of research in this area, and they had a collaboration with scientists at the University of California, I think it was Davis. And one of the experience was to take conventional agriculture using pesticides, organic agriculture using limited inputs, not harmful inputs, and then natural agriculture, which uses nothing but whatever leaves that fall down or whatever's there. And they showed that the root systems were strongest on those plants grown through natural agriculture with no inputs. The second strongest were the organic ones, and the weakest root systems were the conventionally grown foods. That's their immune system. It's the same, it's a parallel to what we've done with antibiotics. The more antibiotics we throw into ourselves, the less effective they are. Until now, we've reached a crisis with antibiotics, where they're not working anymore in many cases. The same thing with the pesticides. You have to keep putting more and more and more. And there's a crisis with the soil. There was an article recently by a small farmer in Iowa who said Iowa used to have the richest soil in the nation. The soil is completely degraded because of industrial agriculture. How are we going to live without soil? And you see it in the fact that Americans, I don't know about other parts of the world, have an obesity crisis. Half of our country is obese because the quality of the food is so degraded. I read one time you have to eat 10 apples today to get the minerals and vitamins that one apple used to provide. So the degradation of our food, the loss of biodiversity in our food system, there used to be tens of thousands of varieties of rice. The ancient cultures knew how to have complete diets based on what was available. I think we have the wrong notion of what life was like before agriculture. There was plenty of wild foods that provided all of the needs available, but as the human community spread, those foods were diminished. We lost the connection with the earth and the maintain the natural cycles until agriculture came in. And now we've moved to the point where we're losing small farmers, and now we'll be left with industrial agriculture. There's another article not long ago about one of our dairy centers in Wisconsin, that the dairy farming has become so industrialized that small dairy farmers can no longer exist. They can't support themselves. A small dairy farmer may have a few thousand cows, or a few hundred, a few thousand, but how can that compete with an industrial farm of 15,000 cows that controls the whole thing, from the cow to the meat? And so the industrial farming is destroying our food system. So how do we turn that around? It's not only depleting the soil, it's also using up our water, underground water. So what are we going to do without water and good soil? Now they're talking about growing plants inside, just in water, without soil, without realizing the benefits that soil provides, the minerals that soil provides to foods. There are all these microorganisms in the soil that enhance the nutritional. So what are the consciousness changes? I know Aliaa is going to get into that in the next session, but we can't talk about climate change. And this has been one of my frustrations in going to the UN climate conferences. Yes, you have to deal with the outer changes we have to make, which is a very complex. How do you change the whole economy, global economy? I have no illusion that this is a simple fix and that it can be done with a few things. I mean, we know we have to change the energy system. We know we have to change the way we live in terms of how we use our energy. We know we have to move away or reduce our dependence on meat and move more to a plant-based diet. Doesn't mean we can't have meat, but maybe we have it more consciously and more. In the ancient times, even in 200 years ago, people didn't have meat 3 times a day. It was saved for a holiday or for the Sabbath. It was a special occasion to have meat. And yet we've grown into a world where we think we can have whatever we want, whenever we want it. Also, moving more toward local farmers, which is beginning in certain pockets in the U.S., small local farmers. And I know that there's certain places like India where 60% of the country are farmers. I mean, America's lost so many farms. And I pray that those places don't follow the U.S. model and move to industrial farming. Before it's too late, maintain your local farming population and begin to move or to use more consciously. I don't think it's like if you're a drug addict, you just can't stop one day and say, I'm never going to take it again. I'm never going to take a drink of alcohol. Maybe that is the way you do it for those things. But there has to be a gradual transition. But we need leadership to give out these messages, to tell people, to show people that sacrifice is actually for their benefit. It's not something you do grudgingly. You're actually providing benefit to yourself and to the world. Sacrifice, the concept, is intrinsic in all religious. And yet we think of it as a negative, but it's actually positive because you give it the lesson to the kingdom. And there's always benefit that comes anytime we make a sacrifice. People notice when they engage in fasting, which is a spiritual practice. There's tremendous benefit that comes from that. Anytime you give up something, you're strengthening your character. You're strengthening your will. You're receiving personal benefit from such things. Why are you contributing to the greater whole? So, in talking about the consciousness shifts we need to make, which I know Aliaa will expand upon it, and I'll sort of close with this so we can have some time for questions and discussions. I think experiencing a personal connection with the natural world is key. It used to be part of our life for everybody because we lived with nature. And the movement into the cities has made it harder and harder to connect. And the degradation of the environment. I mean, where do you have to go to find a beautiful spot? And so where it's easier to connect. I mean, you can connect with a plant. You don't have to really go anywhere. Connect with just not from leaving your home. But it is helpful to go and surround yourself. I always found forests to be very healing for me. Why do people like to take a walk in the forest? Or why do people like to sit by the ocean? It's healing. And I've also heard that the vibrations coming from the earth are healing. So walking barefoot on the earth, sitting on the earth, has a way of healing and helping one come out of oneself, to move, to evolve beyond this narcissistic worldview, this extreme individualism that has evolved is essential. And to evolve toward a more collective view, that we are part of a whole. I mean, just like with your body, you have to think of your body as a whole system, not as just individual parts that are unconnected. So to move toward the consciousness of the whole and to realize that what we do affects the whole, even a minor thing, like washing your clothes less often, as Sharon said, anything you do affects the vibration of the whole, the collective. And so being more conscious of how we can affect that collective, I think is a calling to all of us now. It could be small steps. I mean, mountains are moved with innumerable small steps. And I think one of the hardest things that we try to convey to young people is that what they do makes a difference, because it can be overwhelming. When you look at the crises that are hitting us from all sides, you know, and when I first started going to the climate conferences in 2008, it was future, future, future. It's going to happen at some point. It's no longer future. It's now. We put it off and put it off and put it off. And I remember after the Katrina hit the US, I was sitting with someone from the UN, and he said to me, I'm very sorry to say, but maybe the US needs a few more Katrinas to wake up. And so we've had a few more disasters. And you know, I don't think everybody needs to wake up. You know, there's that 100th monkey phenomenon. If 100 monkeys gain a certain skill, it runs for the whole species. If enough people become conscious and make these evolutionary adjustments in our consciousness, it could spread through the whole species. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at an evolutionary move, moving out of extreme individualism into more a collective, awakening our love again for the natural world. Because when you love something, you don't harm it. You don't neglect it. You don't disregard it. Since I had that dream of the whales have not been out of my consciousness. A connection, bonds. And I think of them. And I send, you know, one of the things about the whales is they communicate by thought. There's a certain time of year where whales all over gather in this place in the Dominican Republic, and together they put their nose down to the earth and they sing. They sing their haunting song to the earth. And yet they're communicating through some means with each other that they gather there. So it is possible to communicate with other species. And I think the heart is the way to sing about loving relations with other species and knowing that we're with them. We don't want to see harm come to them. We don't want to be perpetuators of harm. And yet we're turning around a huge ship, and we have to have compassion and patience with our efforts. I think having compassion on ourselves as a human community that is struggling to awaken and is struggling to make the changes. And hopefully we'll have the intelligence and the breakthrough. We put our collective energy into coming up with solutions instead of fighting over territory and whatnot. We drive there much quicker. So that's my hope. We can put together our collective intelligence so we can come up with these solutions, and that we can fall in love with our earth again. Thank you.
Then the Greek Aliaa Rafea from the Women College and Sharm. Yes, and she chair of the and founder of the Human Foundation System of the Egypt. She makes use of anthropological perspectives for understanding issues related to religion, politics, and culture. And we have been talking about that this afternoon. And she edited many books published in India, Jordan, Morocco, Canada, and USA. And please, the floor is yours for next half an hour. We would like to hear you speak the need for a shift of consciousness in dealing with climate change. Thank you for your presentation. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you very much, Professor Lal. And Assalamu alaikum. May peace prevail on earth. I would like first to express that I am very humbled to be in this forum and with all these giant scientists, which I attended, and I read many of their presentations, and I salute their efforts to do something for climate change. And also, I would like to express my dear love and appreciation to my dear friends, Gina Maryam and Sharon Mihalis. We had a long journey together. Maybe I knew now Gina for more than 10 years since the revolution, the Egyptian revolution, and I know Sharon even before that in the 90s or even in the 80s, and we have common works together. Now I would like just to say that my presentation is called what? The need of shift of consciousness. Actually, my previous presenters they dealt with this kind of consciousness that we need. But let me proceed of how I reached the conclusion that actually they presented and they said. First of all, we have to acknowledge that we are in a chaotic time and in complete blindness. We swim in the darkness and do not know our direction and where we are heading. Maybe something happens to bring the sun forth to make us see and find our common roots. Maybe. Perhaps we realize that we must come together to do miraculous work that will last for future generations. Maybe. To save the earth from fateful annihilation We must transcend our ego and be conscious of belonging to the human family and the cosmos. This is my point to start. And my wonder is that we know about the climate crisis. The last decade have witnessed growing interest in facing the destructive prospects of climate change. Loss of biodiversity, deforestation, and increasing poverty are threatening livelihood sustainability. The mainstream scientific methodology is often poorly equipped to deal with these challenges. Something is missing, and we must find it. Ecosystem degradation comprises the well-being of over 3 billion people, and a growing tide of pollution and waste costs some 9 million lives annually, according to the Secretary General of the United Nations. And there is science, and science suggests many solutions. Yes, science enlightens our way, but it is not enough to work. Scientists, for example, as we heard in these forums, and this part of what I'm saying is just part of what is can be a summary of certain main issue. Scientists suggested that the approach to integrating resources management must be customized to different ecosystems to meet the need of communities. This approach requires developing intense knowledge and understanding of the coping mechanisms to deal with drought risk, managing and restoring ecological function, sustainably harvesting biodiversity, and diversifying production system and livelihood. This technological understanding must be shared globally, regionally, and nationally, and be adapted accordingly. But why we are not reaching the vulnerable community? For scientific solution to reach vulnerable community, they need to support the national policy. They need the support of the national policy. National policies respond to common social value, which is not necessarily in harmony with the international policies. When the standard value system focuses on immediate short-term interests and overlooks the impact of climate change in the long term, vulnerable communities remain at risk. I think we have a very famous case that we have to really remember when we heard Trump saying there is no such a thing as climate change. And he was really appealing to the business, the industry, and so on for his own political gains. Many other leaders, they are not as blunt, but also they are not taking the serious action for the same reason. So, where are we heading to? For 50 years since the first global conference for the environment in Stockholm, 30 years since the first conference on climate change in Rio de Janeiro, and 7 years since the Paris Agreement, world is still scrambling to find the right path to face the challenging crisis of climate change. At COP27 this year, which are going to be held in November in Egypt, countries involved will review and renew nationally determined contribution concerning Paris Agreement. They will not wait 5 years from Glasgow COP26. The world needs this urgent commitment. What do we expect? Are we optimistic? The Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, IPCC, report this year, 2022, the report states that the Paris Agreement and the CDGs have come to provide direction for coordinating, financing, and assessing global progress in climate change adaptation action. It focuses on transformation and system transition in energy, land, ocean, coastal and freshwater ecosystem, urban, rural, and infrastructure, and industry and society. What we would expect, very promising. It sounds very promising. From COP26 to COP27, under the Paris Agreement, 195 countries set a target to keep average global temperature change below 2 degrees Celsius, based on announcement made during COP26 experts estimate that we are on a path of 2.4 degrees Celsius warming. Parties agree to revisit their commitment as necessary by the end of 2022 to put us on track to 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, maintaining the upper end of condition under the Paris Agreement. COP27 is a continuation of the Paris Pledge to hold on the national determined contribution. What do we expect? We don't expect anything to happen. Why is the pattern dealing with climate change not likely to take another effect? I have my reason. First of all, the complexities of interconnectedness between the national and the global economy within the global and regional power struggles hinder the efficiency of effort to face the climate change. You know, we very obvious, Ukraine and Russia conflict now. How are we going to realize any of this condition with this conflict which is going to continue? In Stockholm, June this year, Secretary General of the United Nations warned today global well-being is in jeopardy, in large because we have not kept our promises on the environment. Globalization created a universal culture that encouraged consumerism, greed, selfishness, and individualism. Those who dominate the global economy think of their short-term interests and are not likely to pay attention to share seriously in realizing CDGs as intertwined with climate change. The cultural values and worldview worldwide are blind to seeing the climate change crisis. People in developed countries are victims of inherited value system that cut them from their interconnectedness to nature. So what we're going to do, we have to come back to nature. We have to let nature educate us. We have to learn from nature to cut across the gap between plans and action. Let me tell you how. Organisms are open systems. They cannot survive without continuously exchanging matter and energy with their environment. The mutual interaction of the component system, in a way, glue these components together into whole. Even though we may not be aware of our interconnection, with the conscious, with our conscious, we are part of a whole system, and spiritual. But being conscious of our interconnectedness brings another value system to focus, perceiving the cosmos. Perceiving the cosmos as interrelated and the interconnected systems ad infinitum removes the delusion of separateness. Everything is connected to everything, and it is magnificent to realize that human can apprehend this interconnected. This is only possible because human consciousness is an extension of the universe consciousness. I'd like to repeat this statement again. That is, our human consciousness is an extension of the universe consciousness. This awareness will shift the attention from individualistic perception to empathetic attitude. Taking the organismic approach to our consciousness means that we perceive the universe as a live entity with a self-generating process. With quantum mechanics theory, we are in a stage of transition. John von Neumann reformulated quantum theory as a theory of an evolving objective universe interacting with human consciousness. This psychology also relates between our psyche and the physical realm. This psychology expresses this relationship between the psyche and the physical realm through what the Swiss psychologist Carl Sapiens called archetypes. The archetypes are related to the collective unconsciousness that relate human to human and natural world. Nature inspired science through unconscious. This was true to Watson and DNA, and Wolfgang Pauli, the Nobel Prize winner. Oneness of life and oneness of humanity enlightened our past to face the crisis of our time. Quantum mechanics and psychology reveal our oneness in the unconscious level and our mutual interaction with nature. Nature may inspire us for knowledge that could heal our agony, whether we know it or not. A sincere drive to serve our planet leads us to solutions that may surprise us. That is what we call innovation. It is an inspiration coming from the universe, the unknown part within us that is connected, this part within us is connected to the whole. Cultivating our heart, we have to cultivate our heart with the same way we cultivate the land. International agreement, research institutions, and scientific accomplishment have not realized their objective. They are interrupted by pandemics, conflict, regional wars, and lust for domination and hegemony. There must be a parallel plan for paradigm shift of consciousness. We need to cultivate our heart with love and empathy by opening to this interconnect. Now, I avoided actually any religious term, but I think that all religions, as you mentioned, and as you quote, they emphasize this kind of interconnectedness. Also, the indigenous knowledge emphasize this interconnectedness. I am here speaking from Ain Shams University, the eye of the sun, the eye of the sun. And that is pharaonic expression. And on this land, history started by this connection of human being to the whole. And I hope that Egypt will retain its message to the whole world. And I'm optimistic that maybe building the COP27 in this land, maybe do something. Maybe that the Egypt land will inspire the FNG to do real and seriously about our crisis. Now, if I move from the holistic comprehensive picture to local implementation, coming back to the CDG, I would just stress the CDGs are the core and the heart of facing the climate change crisis. According to IPCC report of 2020, adaptation is linked closely to CDG. Adaptation as a broad concept is reduce risk and vulnerability to climate change, strengthen resilience, enhance well-being, and anticipate and respond successfully to change. Now, reducing climate change risk requires immediate and long-term adaptation efforts. Civil society must support the governmental efforts to bring national plans to serve the livelihood of vulnerable communities. Here, I would like to mention the message of the Human Foundation. The Human Foundation envisions a world where every person has equal opportunity to bring forth their human potential to contribute to the human and natural environment, realizing prosperity, stability, and peace. The HF mission focuses on fostering human values that cherish freedom, maintain equality and justice, respect the diversity, cultivate gender balance, and secure human rights through knowledge, science, and people-centered sustainable development. The HF and the IFE projects care most about supporting human beings to take an inner journey to know who they are, and renew the meaning of life continuously. The activities of the HF support people to uncover the innate connection with the impersonal aspect of life, meaning that they discover the interconnection with the whole. And the scope of the work in the HF is very wide, eliminating cultural value, which is a initiative in the field of human development, fostering research in areas that serve the foundation mission, using multi- and interdisciplinary approaches with collaboration with academic institutions, capacity building program by intent realization, science, art, and management. The HF is committed to contribute to the climate change. The Human Foundation is committed to contributing to climate change in collaboration with IGDP, aiming at increasing awareness with action to sustain human values, to preserve the natural resources for human future. The HF bases activities on serving the grassroots, cutting across different social strata, and serving the prosperity and dignity of all. And here I would like to give a message to the COP27. I'd like to tell them the world needs to put clashes aside to face climate change as a significant threat to life on Earth. Let us raise global awareness that we are part of each other. Let this be the base of a new dawn of civilization. Let us be one family, working together for the betterment of all, and let nature inspire us to heal their wounds. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation, very comprehensive, very strong message, what should be achieved and obtained at COP27. I think this third presentation, along with the other two, were on the same topic of interconnectivity and how to bring humanity closer to nature. Thank you so much. I think there must be some question. I see Dr. Ismail Saragafin. Maybe welcome to you, sir. I'm glad to see you here. We're glad to see you participating and good health. So you may have some question to begin with.
Well, I really have a comment on, especially the last presentation.
Sure.
Aliaa, particularly what I would like to do. So part of that have been set up. Yeah. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, hi. So I was saying that following up on Dr. Aliaa's presentation of interconnectedness, one of the fundamental problems that we have, and I think this deserves a separate seminar at some other time, is the fact that the fundamental measures of economic activity, which we all know, GDP, is disconnected from not just from nature, so that a forest standing up counts for zero, a forest being cut down makes a positive contribution to GDP. It is also disconnected from people to the point where you do not measure welfare, and not only that, but unremunerated work of mothers taking care of children and so on is not counted in any of that. So we need to really amend that to the point where we can have the equivalent of, like if you have a private corporation, you cannot sell assets and count them as revenue. That's illegal. But governments do this all the time in GDP calculations. They sell off their assets and count them as revenue. So we need to have a capital account system that brings in these capital, meaning not just the produced capital of buildings, equipment, and so on, produced assets, but also human capital. That is education, health, nutrition. Human capital is what's embedded in me and which I take with me when I travel. And social capital, which holds the country together and enables it to function and to have laws and to have systems. And most importantly, of course, natural capital, which has environmental services as well as action. That interconnectedness was put out by economists by counting them. And have made.
We are losing your voice, Dr. Ismail. When you move to the capital, can you repeat this last two sentences? Because we didn't hear them.
Okay. We need not just flow method of income, which is what gross GDP is about. We need to bring in capital, stocks of capital. Yes, produced assets, buildings, equipment, all that stock capital, but so is natural capital, both in terms of environmental services produced as well as the interconnectedness that Dr. Aliaa was talking about. And then human capital, which is the investment to make people in terms of education, health, and nutrition, which is embedded in a person, so when they migrate, they take it with them. But social capital, which holds things together, allows us to fight. Work was done on that about 20 years ago. It is still being done right now, but it was the biodiversity report that he and I did before. And right now, we have a global commission of water, which is trying to look at the historical cycle and how to bring that into our understanding of the circular economy things can come together. So there is now a beginning of an effort, even in post, to bring in these dimensions that I think Dr. Aliaa and colleagues were talking about. I hope that one day Dr. Adel will recognize Rafea will organize a conference with some of the top thinking economists. I emphasize thinking economists, not all economists, but thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ismail Saragaldin. Those excellent comments on different types of capital, human, nature, social, and interconnectivity in view of the presentation by Dr. Aliaa.
I'd like just to stress the point that Dr. Ismail is saying about the human capital. That is the capital that I'm taking it with me. This is how I see myself, how I connect to the world and to the social world, to the natural world and the social world. And I think this should be really interrelated, because when we are connected to ourselves first, and then we can connect to and we connect to the whole, and we connect to the social environment, then we are human beings that can be really active in our environment, social environment and natural environment. And I think this is a very important and very relevant point to what we are dealing with.
Thank you, especially in relation to human capital. Professor Elbeltagy, any comments from the floor? Questions?
Yeah, Professor Abu Hadid, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Aliaa, for the wonderful talk, which we enjoyed, and it actually creates some new ideas. It is clear, actually, that climate change is linked to economical benefits of the superpowers, and that several claims we hear from the third world on the and never have been materialized in this respect. How to shift consciousness in dealing with climate change in a world governed by financial benefits and materialized. A world that the strong create wars to trade the lives of people for the gain of dollar. I think it is very difficult, or in other words, is it possible?
Okay. Lawan, let me tell you that I am holding a vision. And a vision which I think it is valid as a vision. But at the same time, in order to turn a vision to be practiced on real ground, then I have, first of all, to apply this vision on me. And second, to plant the seed around me. It's like we are bringing or doing or having another land. It's like I am really initiating something. Yes, maybe it's not. It's very difficult to deal with on the level of political scenarios, economic benefits, and all these kind of things. But because I believe in the power of the unconscious, the power of the spirit, so I feel like if we have like a nucleus group, and I'm sure nucleus group, it's not just my group here in Egypt, but the nucleus group that I met with my friends like the Global Peace Initiative Women, and I met Sharm El Sheikh and many other people around the world, they believe and they really apply what they believe in. And then, because I believe also that I am connected to a power higher than myself, so I am only a medium. I am just a medium. Transfer this energy to the world unconsciously, not personally, not me, but because my belief and other people believe, we are together forming something and related to some power beyond ourselves. But I'm not speaking as a utopian. I believe that I'm really dealing with things with realistic approach. But it is not the common approach. It's not the common approach of how to change by using the same pattern of dealing with things from outside. It is let people get them through to the journey, what I call them, and this is some of the projects that we are having in the Human Foundation. We take people to a journey within themselves, and they see wonders. It brings them to life as they have never seen before. It brings them power as they have never seen before. It opens their eyes to their goals, and it opens their eyes to enjoy every moment in their life. you can make a research about this project and how it has an impact on the people. So change is not going to happen tomorrow, but it's going to happen when we believe it will happen. And it's going to happen when we know our way to make it happen. And we know that what is going to happen is not by our personal small identity. It is by a power that beyond ourselves. So that is my response to your question.
Thank you. Excellent response. Dr. Elbeltagy, any other questions from the floor, comment?
Thank you very much. In fact, I'm very appreciated with the last three presenters for this nice presentation, and which deal with how we love the nature, how to respect the nature. In fact, we are not here to deal with the climate change relation with the plant and the animal or with the soil, but we should also deal with our concept related to our behavior against the nature. What is our performance? How to keep the nature clean? How to keep the nature in a better way? So, in my opinion, their suggestion or recommendation they recommended earlier, we should take it seriously. How to introduce this education, the natural education, at all levels of the state of education. It's not only the scientist's responsibility, but also it is the responsibility of the state, all the policymakers, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Environment, all the ministries related to the environment, because not many people knows about the climate change, how to cope with the climate change, how to cope with the desertification, how to cope with the salinization. So it is all these modern items or phenomena, although it is not modern, but it is very common happen right now. Some parts of the world suffer from floods, the others suffer from dryness, the other suffer from forest fires, and so not many people, not only in Egypt, but maybe in other countries, don't know about this phenomena. So we have to educate and introduce these new phenomena related to environment pollution, environment maintenance, environment, how we keep how to teach the kids to reduce the gas emission at the level of their houses, even that how to keep the water, clean the water, how to keep the light, how to keep the dirties. All this kind of thing must be educated, must be introduced to this education system in all these countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was an excellent comment about the need for education at all levels, different kinds of education, but environment oriented. Any other comments from the floor before, if I have permission from Dr. Elbeltagy, to summarize the session?
One question.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry for coming back, but I just want to.
Your name again.
Ajak,
Short memory.
Ajak, a South Sudanese, in Faculty of Medicine, Alexandria University. I fell in love with this topic. It was very nice. I just wanted to ask a brief question, and I also love to recommend what the last speaker, the professor, has just spoken right now, the comment he gave. That we don't just only have to be taught medicine, agriculture, or geology, or drugs in schools, but we need also to be taught how to deal with this environment. I see all of my colleagues here, whenever you buy these drinks, the bottle, you take water, then you throw it down because you don't care, you took what you want. But that's not how we care about the environment. You need to take that bottle, put it in the dustbin. This is how we take care of environment. So the short notes that you guys are taking out is that when you buy water, take it, keep it until you find a dustbin, and then put it inside, instead of just throwing it down.
I think we are coming to the end of the session, which is unfortunate. It's a very important session from a sense of the proper path for transition. rather than let them leave. Now we say let them live, not let them leave their countries. Let them live in their countries with nature to build it up here. And it's a pleasure for us and honor that we are preparing ourselves to give a message to COP27, and hopefully we will find people to listen. Thank you very much, and I wish you all to have a good day, and thank you for your presence with us, virtually or actually. Thank you very much. مع السلامة.